Can you hear me?
Wait, no, I think there was some issue. I have forgot to start the webinar. Let me just start. Give me just a minute.
Can I start? Namaste. Welcome to the 4th edition of the Global Festival of Oneness, organized by Indica Moksha, celebrating the life and works of Adi Shankara. Let us start with a prayer. Sadashiva Samarambham, Shankaracharya Madhyamam, Asmadacharya Paryantam, Vande Guru-Paramparam. We are very pleased to have with us Vidushi Maitri Gowswami, who is going to talk on the subject Shankaracharya and Vallabhacharya. Before we get on to the talk, I'd like to introduce the speaker. Maitri ji is a Vaishnavite by faith and a learner of Vedanta, Bharatiya culture, and Sanskrit scriptures. She has pursued MA from the Sampuranand Vishwavidyalaya Varanasi with Vedanta as the main subject. As the 17th descendant of Mahaprabhu Sri Vallabhacharya, she has been studying all the Sampradayic scriptures of Pushti Bhakti Margiya sect from her father Sri Sharad Goswami and her revered Guru Goswami Sri Shyam Manohar ji for the last 14 years. In addition to Sampradayic scriptures, she has studied Sanskrit Vyakarana, Nyaya, Sankhya Shastra, and the philosophies of Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, and Madhvacharya as part of comparative studies. In accordance with her duties towards her Sampradaya, she currently preaches the scriptures written by Mahaprabhu, Sri Vallabhacharya, and Vedic philosophy. She is working with her father at Sri Vallabhacharya Vidyapith, established in Gujarat, for publishing, preserving the respected for preserving and teaching the Vedic scriptures and granthas written by the respected acharyas of the Vallabha Sampradaya. She also teaches Vallabha Vedanta in a diploma course run by the Department of Philosophy, University of Mumbai, is currently working as faculty in an online course regarding life and works of Vallabhacharya run by Indica courses. We're very happy to have with us Maitri ji. Welcome to the session.
May I start?
Yeah, please go ahead. The last 5 minutes we will keep for some question answers.
Okay. Namaste, everyone. The topic which I have to discuss today is on the relation between Vallabhacharya and Shankaracharya and on what points they do converge and meet each other. It is well known that we have been, Vallabhacharya and Shankaracharya have always been Purva Pakshi and Uttar Pakshi, as it is the most well known fact. And people feel that they are just two different opposite, they pursue two different opposite perspectives which don't meet at all. And they don't even agree to any point philosophically and even on the ground of sadhana, pranali and religious practices. So this has been my favorite topic always, to establish some sort of integrity between all the Indian philosophical systems, and not just about Vallabhacharya, but each and every acharya of preaching philosophical systems and darshan parampara have always been very much opened up regarding this aspect, that they are always trying to discuss the points which they have understood from what Ved Upanishads have to say, but still they are not trying to confine the infinity of Brahman in any of the Vad. And that's the point where each and every Acharya have to meet. And this is the greatness of Indian culture and Indian philosophical systems, that in spite of being having different perspectives regarding the philosophical aspects, they always have respected each other, and they have always been one on the ground of Ved and the infinity of Brahman. As Upanishad says that Sarve Rishayah Sarve Hotaraha Yatraika Nidam Bhavati. So just like the birds, they go to find the grain in many directions, but ultimately they come back to their home by evening, and they have a place where they reside all the time, and that's the main ground of their survival and their integrity. So the same way, each and every Acharya, in spite of being discussing different philosophical systems and different perspectives, they have different approaches they have regarding what is the interpretation of Vedas and how the philosophy of Brahmavad should be explained in their philosophical system. Still, ultimately, they come back to the same way, the same infinity of Brahman, and accept their inability to discuss Brahmavad to the infinite level of Brahman. So this is the ground of subject which we are going to discuss today, and majorly Shankaracharya and Vallabhacharya. So I have divided the talk into two parts. There are some historical incidents on which they both meet each other, though not personally Shankaracharya, but Madhusudan Saraswati and Vallabhacharya, they were contemporary to each other. And the scholarship of Madhusudan Saraswati has been accepted as the best kind of Acharya in Shankar Vedanta, and Vallabhacharya, as they both were contemporary to each other. And obviously about the philosophical parts, where Vallabhacharya agreed to Shankaracharya and has tried to create a bridge between both the philosophical systems. So to start with this part, Brahmavad is the common ground between both the Acharyas, and it doesn't need to be explained because both are Brahmavadis, both are talking about the ultimate reality with the aspect of Brahman, who is the ultimate reality in this universe, on the ground of Upanishad, Ved, and Brahma Sutras written by Vedavyas. So in the second adhyaya, first part of Brahma Sutra, where Shankaracharya is discussing the Brahmavad from the Upanishadic perspective by providing the arguments in front of Buddha, where he says that as a Brahmavadi, I cannot accept any such argument which is not deliberately taken out from Upanishad. And those who don't accept Brahman as the ultimate reality, that point of view cannot be accepted as I am a Brahmavadi. On the other side, when Mahaprabhu Sri Vallabhacharya is introducing his philosophical system, at that time even he is claiming the same point by saying that I will not even try to discuss any such point which is not coming inside the boundary of Brahmavad as accepted in Upanishad. So the prefix which we have added to all the Brahmavadis, like the philosophical system of Mahaprabhu Sri Vallabhacharya is known as Shuddhadvait Brahmavad, while on the other side, Bhagavadpada Shankaracharya, his system, his philosophical system has been addressed as Kevaladvaitavad. Now, Advait is the common ground, Dvait, Advait, both, integration of Dvait and Advait, both somehow is the common ground. Brahmavad is the common ground, but Kevaladvait and Shuddhadvait, these are the prefixes which have been given to both these systems later on, but no one of both these acharyas have ever tried to establish their system independently and on the name of some particular system. Rather, they have always introduced themselves as Brahmavadis who are talking regarding the integrity, the infinity of Brahman based on Upanishads. So now the second question which raises is just about the defining Brahmavad, how the objective of integrity between Dvait and Advait could be established in the in accordance with the relation of universe and Jivatma with the Brahman, and how that particular Brahmavad, as explained in Upanishads, could be interpreted in both the philosophical systems. So there Mahaprabhu Shri Vallabhacharya says that Brahmavade niruktistu navaktavaiva kutrachit vastuto Brahma sarvam hi vyavaharastu lokatah. So in Patravalamban text, Mahaprabhu says that there Brahman can never be defined, Brahmavad can never be defined because everything is Brahman. And that's why Itar Vyavartak Dharma, which can differentiate two objects from each other by defining, because the whole system of defining a particular term or a particular system depends upon differentiating it from some other type of system or some other type of object. So here Mahaprabhu says that Itar Vyavartaka Dharma, it means any such characteristic which can differentiate Brahman from anything else, or which can differentiate Brahmavad from anything else, is not at all available. Because when we are saying that Brahman is infinite in its nature, it is Ekameva Dvitiya Tattva, at that time you cannot differentiate Brahman from anything else. And that's why in the absence of Itar Vyavartak Dharma, definition of Brahman, the way we try to define all the worldly object by differentiating it from some other object is not applicable in Brahmavad. And that's why Brahmavad can have only one interpretation. It can never be differentiated from other system. This is the aspect of all-inclusiveness, in which Brahman is the object or the tattva which doesn't exclude anything at all. So if it is not excluding anything at all, at that time, each and every object, each and every thought process, each and every philosophical system will find its integration in some or the other characteristic of Brahman, and that's why they both cannot be differentiated on any ground. And that's why Brahmavad in itself is not a definable term or not a definable philosophical system. Now, here when the question arises that there are many philosophers who have tried to explain Brahmavad, I will not like to use the term definition because it is completely a different concept. So I will say that those whoever have tried to interpret Brahmavad from the statements given in the Upanishad, about them Mahaprabhu Shri Vallabhacharya says that Bhagavan Sarva Bhuteshu Lakshitah Swatmana Harihi Drashyair Buddhyadibhir Drashta Lakshanair Anumapakaihi. So now Lakshanaha Anumapakaha. So here Mahaprabhu says that how do you explain the characteristic of Brahman? This will work as a scale for defining your Brahmavad or your perspective of Brahmavad. So Pratipurusham Prativishayam Shastrani Prasratani Tani na Sarvatha Badhita Vishayani. So here he says that for each and every person and each and every subject, Shastrani Prasratani, the Shastras have elaborated each and every person, each and every thought process, and each and every object. Now, the Jnana Shakti of Brahman is infinite in its nature. That same Jnana Shakti comes in the format of Anshatmak Jnana Shakti for each and every individual. So whatever I am able to think, whatever other person is able to think, or whatever sort of Jnana Shakti, including Jnana, Agyan, Vigyan, with all its types, should be considered as the subtypes of the infinite Jnana Shakti of Brahman, which has originated from Shastras. Now those same Shastras don't like to incorporate the Jnana Shakti of Brahman in only one particular frame, but just the way Brahman wants to create the Rupa with infinite aspects, Nama with infinite aspects, and Kriya Shakti with infinite aspects. That's why the Jnana Shakti of Brahman also disperses into infinite types, infinite varieties. And that's why not even a single type of Jnana Shakti which has been inherited by any of the individual being could be negated by anyone else. So Parasparopayogat, because they all are integrated on the ground of Jnana Shakti of Brahman. So they are related, interrelated with each other, and they find their oneness at the Jnana Shakti of Brahman, including Jnana, Vigyan, and Agyan, with all these three types. Bhagavan Staihi Sarvaihi Eva Sarva Bhuteshu Lakshitah Lakshanaya Kyapitah. So here Vallabhacharya says that Bhagavan himself wants to create infinite objects out of him, and that's why with different type of definition, different type of understanding, he himself has established that sort of Jnana Shakti in each and every person, and through that Jnana Shakti we are able to define some or the other characteristic of Brahman with differentiated perspectives. So here he is trying to incorporate all the type of philosophical systems which have emerged in India. So there he says that Nayayikaihi kartratvena, Mimamsakaihi kriyatvena, Vedantaihi atmatvena, Sankhyadigrihi karanatvena. Anyaischa tadbhedaihi jnanatvena gyatrutvena cha. So here he says that when Nayayikas from the school of Nyaya have tried to define the ultimate reality, they have tried to focus upon the kartrata of that, kartritva shakti of that object. Mimamsakas have focused upon the kriya rupata of that object. Vedantaihi, who have been discussed, who are focusing upon the Vedant, the Jnana kind of Ved, they are trying to explain that same infinite object through the form of Atma, which is of both the types, Jivatma and Paramatma. Sankhya Divihi Karanatvena. So Sankhya has tried to explain the Karana Rupata, the Karana Shakti of Brahman. How to understand this? So there he says that Jnanadishthatritvena cha sarvaihi eva Bhagavan ekadesha lakshitaha. It means because infinity of Brahman cannot be incorporated in one single thought process, because we and our Jnana Shakti is finite or parichin in its nature. That's why all these Vadis, Brahmavadis, or all these establishers of philosophical systems are trying to focus upon ekadesha lakshitaha. It means any single perspective of Brahman. So it may be Kriya Shakti, it may be Karana Shakti, it may be Jnana Shakti, it may be Atma Shakti, likewise. For explaining this aspect, he is giving the example of Andhahastivar. So 10 blind people who are trying to understand that what could be the shape of an elephant or how the elephant can be defined. So because of being blind, they were not able to see the elephant. That's why they were trying to touch one body part of the elephant and were trying to define it. So the one who was able to touch the chest part of elephant, he said that elephant is like a wall. The one who was able to touch the foot of the elephant, they said that elephant is like a pillar. So the same way, anubhavena yuktyacha, through our own experiences, through the yukti, means through our thought process, swatmana anubhavena drashyaihi drashta. The way in our Atma we have realized some characteristic of Brahman, buddhyadivishya lakshanaihi asadharana chinnaihi jiveshu pravesham alavamanahi kriyadibihi. Through buddhi, because through our brain, the Jnana Shakti of Brahman has been infused in us. And that's why some or the other type of asadharana chinna, asadharan character of Brahman is infused in our mind by his own desire, not by our desire or through our sadhanas or practices. Jiveshu pravesham, the Brahman gets infused into the brain and the Jnana Shakti and Kriya Shakti of Jiv. अतएव अनुमापकैः तर्कसह कृतैः परोक्ष ज्ञान जनकैः लक्षित इति संबंधः लक्षणया ज्ञापित इति अर्थः. So here he says that अतएव अनुमापकैः, it means the scale to define Brahman, the scale to explain Brahman, or the scale to understand Brahman is different for each and every one, just because Brahman has desired to reveal one characteristic of his infinite characteristics in front of one individual being or individual beings who have tried to understand or realize or relish that infinite object. And that's why that anumapak, that scale of understanding Brahman, can be tarka sahakrit. It means it can be based upon the logical understanding. Paroksha jnana janakaihi. Sometimes it can be not, it can always be pratyaksha jnana, but it can be paroksha jnana, which is revealed through understanding of shastras, and sometimes through atma bodh, where Brahman can reveal his infinity in the heart of the being, or which can also be understood as the manasa pratyaksha of Brahman, which is understood through the yoga marg and jnana marg both. So now lakshanaya gyapita iti artha. So now, however I have tried to understand that object, or however that object has tried to reveal his infinity in front of the being, through those characteristics we try to define that particular object, just the way all the blind people were trying to understand what is the form of elephant, but no one was able to understand the whole physics of elephant, but they were just focused upon one element of that particular object. The same way, each and every Brahmavadi would be able to elaborate some or the other characteristic of Brahman and would always fail to explain the infinity of Brahman. This aspect is explained by Shankaracharya, where he says that Brahman should always be understood as a nirdharmak object, because not even a single character can ever be able to confine Brahman. And that's why when all the characteristics find refuge in Brahman, that's why each and every characteristic, through whatever dharma we try to define Brahman, that nirguna, nirdharma, nirakar tattva will always remain untouched by all sort of philosophical thoughts and procedures. There, Shankaracharya in his Brihadaranya Upanishad Bhashya says that Tasmat Tarkika Chat Bhat Raja Pravesham Abhayam Durgamidam. So he says that this is a Abhaya Durga. It means such a fortified wall around Brahman in which no one can ever enter that wall. Not even a Tarkik, not even a Chat Bhat Raja, whoever he is. This is a Abhaya Durga in which no one can ever enter. Idam alpa buddhya gamyam shastra guru prasada rahitaihi cha. And especially those who are not enriched with the Guru Prasad, who have not entered into a particular philosophical system where their Guru can explain them the infinity of Brahman. So those with alpa buddhi who are trying to understand Brahman with their tarka, they can never enter this fortified wall of Brahman. तदेजति तन्नैजति तद्दूरे तद्वंतिके इत्यादि विरुद्ध धर्म समवायित्व प्रकाशक मंत्र वर्णेभ्यश्च. Now, who will be able to enter that fortified wall of Brahman, understanding Brahman? There he says that those who are trying to understand him, those who are not even trying to understand him, those who are deprived of understanding Brahman, all these types of understandings, different types of jnana shaktis, they should be understood as viruddha dharma samavayitva prakashaka mantra varnebhyascha. It means Brahman has all the type of different characteristics, different types of dharmas. They find refuge in infinity of Brahman, because the one who is finite in its nature will always have only one type of characteristic. But as Brahman is infinite in its nature, that's why he has multiple characteristics. Those characteristics being finite, we are finite, therefore we find those characteristics to be opposite of each other. So for example, we say that Gyan and Agyan are two opposite things, or Satta and Asatta are two opposite things, or Rati and Arati are two opposite things. But in Kriya Shakti, Jnana Shakti and Anandatmika Shakti or Rati Shakti of Brahman, Gyan, Agyan, Vigyan or Kriya Shakti, Kartrutva, Akartrutva, Anyatha Kartrutva, all these will find refuge, and that's why Brahma should be understood with an object which has different characteristics, opposite characteristics through the worldly view or physical view of ours. Same statement Mahaprabhu Vallabhacharya also gives, where he says that Shrutau Nana Prakaraneshu Srishti Vedaha Sahasrasho Nirupitaha. So now each and every philosophical system is trying to define the causation, the theory of causation, or the procedure of creation of this world and individual beings in one particular way. Mahaprabhu says that Shrutau Nana Prakaraneshu, in different prakaranas of Shruti, Srishti Vedaha Sahasrasho Nirupita, 1,000 varieties of Srishti and the procedure of creation of the Srishti have been explained. Srishtyadi Bhedeshu Nana Prakarena Pratipaditatvat Anyonya Virodhad Na Kinchit Pramanam Brahmani Bhavishyati. Now the problem is that if I say that no sort of causation theory can ever be accepted as a universal theory or all-inclusive theory, and only as a single theory for explaining the Brahmavad. So in this case, if this is the case, then no one would be able to explain the creation. No one would ever be able to explain the Brahmavad. In this case, how to understand the approach of all the different philosophical systems in Brahmavad? So there he says that Sarvavada Navasaram Nana Vadanurodhita Vastu Tastu Shrutau Nana Vakyam Eka Vakyata Nirupita Sarva Bhavana Samarthyena Viruddha Dharma Shrayatva. So here he says that all the philosophical systems can explain Brahman in some finite way, and if we focus upon the infinity of Brahman, then no sort of philosophical thought process or system would ever be able to explain the infinity of Brahman. So here he says that because Brahman is accepted as the element who has the Shakti of Sarva Bhavan, it means he can create infinite objects out of him. There are infinite possibilities infused in the infinity of Brahman, and that's why he should be understood as an object which is Viruddha Dharmashraya. It means Viruddha Dharmanam Ashraya, the one who is refuge of all the contradictory characteristics. Sarve Vadaha Swabhranti Parikalpitattvena Vastusparsha Bhavad Anavasara Parahata Eva. So here he says that each and every Vad, each and every philosophical system, Swabhranti Parikalpitattvena, including his own Vad also. He is not targeting, Mahaprabhu is not targeting other Vadis, but including his own Vad, he is saying that because our finite brain, our finite knowledge has tried to understand that particular object which is of infinite nature, that's why Vastu Sparsha Bhavad, that brain, that finite brain cannot touch that Vastu. There is a abhav of a sparsha of that particular Vastu, the Brahman. And that's why Sarva Vadaha Anavasara Parahata Eva. So not even single Vad, including his own Vad, Shuddhadvaita Vad, would ever be able to explain Brahman. Now, if one Vad is established as a philosophical system who is trying to explain Brahman, then how to understand that Vad? So there he says that Astu Vadinam Hradayam Yathatha. Now each and every Vadi will have different hearts. It means the Jnana Shakti of Brahman will be there in the heart of each and every Vadi in a different way. Vakyanam Saraswati Rupatvat Katham na Ekavakyata. So now the question arises that because the Jnana Shakti of Brahman is a Saraswati, and whatever I am trying to say or whatever some other person is trying to say, even the Sarthaka Shabdaha, even Nirarthaka Shabdaha, even Dvanyatmak Shabdaha, even Aksharatmaka Shabdaha. It means the sound we are able to listen or the words which are spoken in some or the particular language or the sound or the way animals or birds would like to speak, all these type of Vakyas are Saraswati Rupatva. So as a Brahmavadi, I would say that each and every sound finds its origin in Brahman, in the Shakti of Brahman. That's why all the Vakyas are Saraswati Rupa. Each and every word, each and every Vakya is Saraswati Rupatva. Katham na Ekavakyata. So why would we not try to establish some type of similarity between all the type of Vakyas, all the type of words which have been spoken by different Vadis? Iti Ashankyaha, this question arises. Aha nana vadanurodhitad iti ekaiko vado brahmanaha ekaika dharma pratipadaka vakya shesha iti Bhagavan tan sarvaneva anusarati. So here he says that that's why nana vadanurodhitad. So nana means different type of vad. All the type of systems, all the type of thought processes would like to explain ekaika dharma, one single characteristic of the Brahman. Pratipadaka Vakya Shesha. So their Vakya, it means the Vakya spoken by Vallabhacharya, Vakya spoken by Shankaracharya or other Vadis also, they will try to elaborate one characteristic of Brahman. And because Bhagavan himself has infused that type of Jnana Shakti in that particular Vadi, that's why Bhagavan likes to establish his characteristic in each and every Vakya spoken by all the Vadis. So Bhagavan will establish one character in the Vad as proposed by Vallabhacharya. Bhagavan himself will establish his one characteristic in the Vad as explained by Bhagavadpada Shankaracharya. So therefore he says that Viruddha Dharma Bodhaya na Yukyai Kasya Varanam. So here this is the term where this is the Vakya where Shankaracharya says that Viruddha Dharma Bodhaya, Brahman has contradictory characteristics in it. That's why no yukti, no type of explainable system would ever try to confine Brahman in that finite thought process. Now, how to explain this Viruddha Dharmashrayata of Brahman and how to incorporate all the type of procedure of causation, the theories of causation as explained in Upanishads. So there Mahaprabhu says that Ananta Murti Tad Brahma Kutastham Chalamevacha Viruddha Dharmanam Ashrayam Yuktya Gocharam. So Brahman should be Yukti Agochar, Yuktya Gochar. One who cannot be Gochar, one who could not be understood through any sort of yuktis. Achintyananta shaktestad yadetad upapadyate ata eva shrutau bhedaha srushtirukta anekada. And that's why, because Ved itself does not like to confine Brahman in some particular type of system, that's why the same Ved is trying to explain the infinity of Brahman through different type of theories of causation. Now, what are those types? So, for incorporating all the types, Mahaprabhu Sri Vallabhacharya says that Mahendra Jalavat Sarvam Kadachit Mayaya Srujat Tada Jnanadayaha Sarve Varta Matram Navastutaha. Now, technically, the philosophical system of Mahaprabhu Sri Vallabhacharya explains Brahman as Upadana Nimitta Karano Jagat. So, he should be accepted as the material cause, and Brahman itself should be accepted as the efficient cause for all the creation, all the types of creation. On the other side, Bhagavadpada Shankaracharya is accepting Nirakar and Nirgun Brahman beyond the procedure of causation, and that's why Saguna Brahma Maya Shaivalit Brahman is getting infused into the whole procedure of causation. Now, though Mahaprabhu has not accepted this particular theory throughout his Brahmavad or as the essential character of his Brahmavad, but because he wants to keep his Vad opened up for accepting all the other type of procedures of causation, that's why he says that because Brahman always wants varied types of creation, and that's why he doesn't like to keep uniformity in his creation also. So, Kalpabhed, through Kalpabhed, this procedure could be understood. Because in each and every Kalpa, after 1000 Chaturyuga, Brahman does the Pralaya through his Laya Shakti. And when the Pralaya happens, after that, a new creation will happen in the new Kalpa. Now, in each and every Kalpa, Mahaprabhu says that Bhagavan would like to create the Srishti through varied procedures. And that's why in some sort of Kalpa, in one particular type of Kalpa or in one particular type of Srishti, in this varied creations in this universe, Brahman creates a Srishti in which everything is Mahendra Jalavat. It means everything is like magic, everything is like a Swapna. There, Kadachit Mayaya Asrujat, he creates the universe through his Maya Shakti, where he is not involved as the material cause of that universe. Only Maya remains as the material cause of universe. The same way as Bhagavadpada Shankaracharya is explaining the whole procedure of creation. So where Sri Shankaracharya is saying that Maya gets infused into the Saguna Srishti, and that's why each and every object in this universe is just like a Mayic object, a Mithya object. That's why the universes should be accepted as Mithya, in which Brahman is not Upadana Karan, but the Sagunata of Maya is the Upadana Karan. So that type of Srishti has been accepted by Mahaprabhu Sri Vallabhacharya through Kalpabhed. So not as a essential character of his philosophical system, but as a type of creation. Mahaprabhu says that Mahendra Jalavat, the Srishti is created just like a Mahendra Jal. It means the Srishti is completely composed of Maya, Sagunata of Maya. It is Mithya in its nature. Tada Jnanadayaha Sarve Varta Matram Navastutaha. So there, whatever sort of knowledge systems are being proposed, or whatever sort of thought processes are being proposed during that particular type of creation, are just Varta Matram Navastutaha. There is no sort of reality in that particular Srishti. It means everything is of Mithya nature. Swapna Srishti Sangraharthamaha. Now, how to explain Mahendra Jalavat? So there he says that Swapna Srishti Sangrahartham. The way Shankaracharya is trying to explain Vivartavad, where he says that when we create some objects in our dream and we feel that those are real objects, but when we wake up, we feel that there was no sort of reality in all these objects which were thought during the dream period. Same way, the whole creation, this is I mean, the way Shankaracharya is trying to explain Paramarthiki Satta, Vyavahariki Satta, and Pratibhasiki Satta. So there, even in spite of not accepting Jagat as Paramarthik Satta, he has accepted Vyavahariki Satta of Jagat. And in the procedure of the universal happenings, where we create some sort of objects like in the Swapna Kaliki Srishti or Swapna Kalik objects which we create, or the type of vivarth which happens when we try to misunderstand the rope to be a snake, or in any such incident where we create some sort of mithya bhranti, which is known as adhyas. At that time, that object should be, that particular happening should be accepted as the pratibhasiki satta. Now, though Paramarthiki Satta of universe has not been accepted, but Vyavahariki Satta is being accepted by Sri Shankaracharya, because during our behavioral period, we do behave and we do accept universe to be true. So during that particular time, the Vyavahariki Satta of Jagat has been accepted, and inside that Vyavahariki Satta, we have a type of Pratibhasiki Satta. So the same way Mahaprabhu is saying that Mithyatva of a Swapana, Mithyatva of Sansar has been accepted. It means Mahaprabhu is defining the universe or dividing the categories of universe into two types, which is Jagat and Sansar. So Jagat should be accepted as the real, as the concept of realism was, that there Brahman itself is the material cause, Brahman itself is the efficient cause, and that's why the Satta of universe can never be negated, and that's why universe is in its real nature. But Jivatma, because of the Saguna Shakti infused in it by Brahman, tries to create a different perspective of Jagat in his mind, which is known as a Sansara. So, to differentiate both these terms, Mahaprabhu says, Prapancho Bhagavadpada Sansara Mayaya Srijat. So, Sansar is created by Maya, Jagat is created by Bhagavan. So, Sansar is our temperament regarding the universe. So, for example, a table is true in its nature because table is Sadansh of Brahman, but this is my table. This sort of mamatatmak bodh of that particular Jagatic object creates a sansaric drashti or sansaric temperament in my mind, which is mithya. So I don't own. So the temperament of owning that particular table, or having some sort of perspective of being good or bad regarding any universal object or individual being, is sansar, a temperament of sansar, while the object in itself is jagat, which is of its true nature. So sansar is mithya, because the day we become devoid of ahanta and mamata shakti, we would be able to realize that nothing is owned by me, nothing is good or bad, but everything is created out of Sat Shakti and Chita Shakti of Brahman. And that's why Prapancho Bhagavat Karyaha Kintu Sansaraha Maya Sridhar. So Sansar has been created by Maya. So that Sansar has been accepted as the Mithya Satta. So the temperament of accepting those objects as my objects, or being good or bad, that sort of ahanta or mamatatmika drashti which creates a sansar in our brain, that sansar is of mithya nature and jagat is of real nature. So there he says that swapna srishti sangraharthamaha mahendra jalavat sarvam iti. So this is a type of srishti in which even the sansariki drashti, that sansariki drashti doesn't go out of the perspective of Brahmavad. It again should be included under the category of Brahmavad, because that Maya Shakti, that Sagunata, or that Ahanta Mamtatmika Shakti or Vidya Avidya Shakti again are the Shaktis of Brahman only. That's why they cannot be devoid of Brahmiki Satta, but still inside the category of Brahmiki Satta, we would like to say that these are the types of Mayiki Satta. So Sansar will be created by Maya, Jagat will be created by Brahman, and there will be a Kalpa in which the whole Jagat will also be created by Maya only, where Brahman doesn't get involved as material cause of that particular creation. Mayaya kevalaya natu swayam tatra pravishtaha. So here he makes this thing clear that in that particular type of srishti, which should be understood through Kalpabhed, there Maya only becomes the material and efficient cause of that particular creation. Brahma as Swayam, natu Swayam tatra pravishtaha. So Swayam Brahman doesn't get infused in that particular type of creation. And that's why in Bhagavat as well, where Bhagavan says that whoever tries to understand me, whoever tries to define me through Vikalpa, Anukalpa, or Mukhya Kalpa or Sarvakalpa, in all these type of varieties, Brahman itself is infused, but it just depends upon the perspective of the person who is trying to define Brahman in that particular way. So there Mahaprabhu has explained the Krida or Leela Shakti of Brahman in 3 types, where in the Mangalacharana of his text, which is said to be his first treatise, there he says that Namo Bhagavate Tasmai Krishnaya Adbhuta Karmane Rupa Nama Vibhedena Jagat Kridati Yoyataha. So there he says that I bow down to that infinite Tattva who is Krishna itself, who creates the infinite types of Nam, Roop and Kriya out of him. And that Kriya Shakti of Brahman, that Krida Shakti of Brahman, that Leela Shakti of Brahman could be understood through 3 types, which is defined by him as Yaha Kridati, Yaha Jagat Bhutva Kridati, Yato Jagat Kridati. And here he is explaining the aspect of realization of Brahman in 2 types, Sakhandadvaita Brahmagyan and Akhandadvaita Brahmagyan. These both types can be understood as independent types and categories of Brahmagyan also, and could be understood as the 2 stages of Brahmagyan also. So Sakhandadvaita Brahmagyan means there he has differentiated again Sakhandadvaita Brahmagyan into 3 types. That idam vishwam hi bhagavan, idam vishwam hi bhagavan eva, idam vishwam hi bhagavan itaraha. So idam vishwam hi bhagavan, he says that this is the type in which a person can understand that universe itself is Brahman. Bhagavan himself is in the form of universe. Idam vishwam hi bhagavan eva, this is the second type of Brahmagyan, in which a person can understand that I find some sort of similarity between Brahman and Jagat. So there is some similar character between Jagat and Brahman. And idam vishwam hi bhagavan itara. So this universe is completely different from Brahman. Brahman and universe are 2 different objects. So these are the 3 types of Sakhandadvaita Brahmagyan, in which Brahman, the Brahmagyan happens in a Khandit way. It means you are not able to include the infinity of Brahman in each and every Jagatic object, but you are trying to differentiate both the things somehow. So even when the characteristic of similarity is being seen, even at that time, it is Sakhandadvaita Brahmagyan only. And even when we are saying that, okay, this universe is Brahman itself, but you are not trying to take one side where you say that, okay, universe exists or only Brahman exists. So in that case also, it should be understood as Sakhandadvaita Brahmagyan. Now, at the stage of Akhandadvaita Brahmagyan, this is the superior level in which a person attains Kaivalya or Moksha. So there he says that Akhandadvaita Brahmagyan happens at the stage when you are not differentiating between anything and Brahman. So Brahman will be only the matter of your subject. It will only become your subject, the subject of your knowledge, where you would be able to see that there is only Brahman, and whatever inside it is, in the form of universe, in the form of individual beings, everything is so much infused inside Brahman that you are not able to differentiate the characteristics of Brahman, Jagat and Jivatma. So this should be understood as Akhandadvaita Brahmagyan, through which one attains moksha. So now in the procedure of attaining Gyan is explained by Bhagavadpada Shankaracharya, where he is explaining Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi or Dashamastvamasi as the 3 Mahavakyarthas. Even at that time, he is differentiating this procedure into 2 perspectives of Sakhandadvaita Brahmagyan and Akhandadvaita Brahmagyan. I am not giving the passages where Shankaracharya has explained this whole thing in Brahma Sutras because of the lack of time, but I am just trying to paraphrase both the things. That when Shankaracharya says that through the sadhana of Aham Brahmasmi or through the Upadesh of Tattvamasi or Dashamastvamasi, one would be able to realize Brahmatmakta of his individual being. Now, when I am going through the whole procedure of Gyan, realizing the Gyan of Aham Brahmasmi, in that procedure, Aham and Brahman are 2 different entities. Not technically, not philosophically, not through the Tattvarupata of Aham and Brahman, but in the procedure of Gyan I am going through. So when I say that, okay, I am Brahman, I am Brahman, I am Brahman, at that time, still during that sadhana also, I and Brahman are two different objects. Until that moment, it is Sakhanda Advaita Brahmagyan only. It is not Akhanda Advaita Brahmagyan. So when a person grows through the procedure of that Gyan, that procedure is that upasana of Atma, where Shankaracharya is clearly using this term in the third Adhyaya of Brahma Sutra, where he says that rather this procedure of realization of Brahman through Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi or Dashamastamasi should be understood as the procedure of Gyan or should be understood as a procedure of Upasana. So rather it is Atmopasana or it is Atmabodh or Atmagyan. So there he says, he negates the term Gyan, where he says that Atma cannot be a subject of Gyan, but it can be a subject of Upasana only. Because just the way Upanishad is explaining the procedure of Annopasana, Akashopasana, same way it is establishing the procedure of Atmopasana also. So when we are not able to understand the Shaktis of Brahman, at that time those Shaktis are explained through a particular example. The way that, for example, Brahman is the creator, sustainer, and the one who creates, who does the destruction of this universe also. So Utpatti Shakti, Sthiti Shakti, and Laya Shakti are of Brahman only. Now all these Shaktis could not be directly understood in the infinite object. That's why Upanishad says that Akasho Brahmeti Vejanat or Annam Brahmeti Vejanat or Prano Brahmeti Vejanat, etc. So where Anna is not being equated with Brahman, but just the way the Anna creates us, Anna sustains us, and devoid of Anna, we destroy our own body. Same way, when we are able to understand these three Shaktis of Brahman in Anna, after understanding it in Anna, we would be able to understand that what that Nirdharmak object is. So the Shankaracharya is explaining that there is some sort of integrity of characteristics between the characteristic of Anna, Pran, Akash and Atma with the characteristic of Brahman, though Brahman is a Nirdharmak object. And that's why we are not saying that Anna should be equated with Brahman, but these Shaktis of Brahman should be understood through Anna on the primary level of knowledge. And when you are on the superior level of knowledge, at that time you would be able to realize all these characteristics of Brahman in your own self without equating it with Anna, Pran, Akash or Atma also. So that's why through the procedure of Aham Brahmasmi, this whole procedure of Gyan, through this whole procedure of Dashamastomasi or Tattvamasi, realization of Brahman also happens as per the Shankar philosophy in both these levels of Sakhanda-Advaita Brahmagyan and Akhanda-Advaita Brahmagyan. So in the procedure of Sakhanda-Advaita Brahmagyan, when I am trying to equate the characteristic of Atma with Brahman, so though by negating the Brahmatmakta of Jagat, when I am saying that Aham Brahmasmi, my Atma is Brahman or Tattvamasi, in this Upanishad, in this Upadesh of Upanishad, the Upanishad is saying that your Atma is Brahman. See Brahman in your Atma only. Your Atma is not being equated with Brahman. Brahman and Atma are not two similar objects because Brahman should always be Ekameva Dvitiya. That's why only the Shaktis of Brahman, only the Dharma of Brahman, which could not be understood on being on the level of primary source of knowledge, at that time the characteristics are being mingled with each other, integrated with each other, and that's why Shankaracharya ji says that it should be Atmopasana. So you are trying to go near Brahman through Atma. So Atma is just being used as a material to go near Brahman or to understand Brahman or have an approach towards the characteristics of Brahman, and that's why that Atmopasana takes you towards the understanding and realization of Brahman, where even Aham is not there, even Asmi is not there, only the Brahmic realization remains, and that's the point when you attain Mukti. Just the way Mahaprabhu Vallabhacharya is trying to explain the realization of Brahman in two levels of Sakhanda-Advaita Brahmagyan and Akhanda-Advaita Brahmagyan. So Akhanda-Advaita Brahmagyan happens on this juncture where even Aham doesn't remain, even Asmi doesn't remain, only the realization of Brahman remains. So therefore he is saying that when we are even using this particular statement that Idam Vishwam hi Bhagavan, so still Idam must even go, even Vishwam must go on, only Bhagavan should remain, and that would be the juncture when I would Mahaprabhu would title that particular realization as Akhanda-Advaita Brahmagyan, where only Bhagavan remains. not even equating the worldly objects like table, chair, or individual being or anything in this universe with Brahman. Though Brahman has acquired those forms, still all those forms are of finite nature. They don't have the characteristic of infinity. Though Mahaprabhu doesn't negate the establishment of infinity in any of the object, because as per the Avirbhav Tirobhav Vad of Mahaprabhu Sri Vallabhacharya, each and every characteristic of Brahman always remains intact in each and every object. Just that characteristic has been hidden by the desire of Brahman for the sake of his Leela. That's why that characteristic remains hidden, but that characteristic can always be there in each and every object. And that's why the upasana of any other object can be done for understanding the infinity of Brahman, just the way Upanishad is giving some examples. So even for Sri Shankaracharya, Brahman is not a realizable object. Brahman can never be an object of Gyan, because it will always be yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha. So yatah vacha api nivartante, yatah buddhi api nivartante, yatah vani api nivartante, or yatah vadaha api nivartante. So through yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha. So in this statement of Upanishad, again this statement is also explaining the Viruddha Dharmashreta of Brahman. So yato vacho nivartante. So if your vad, each and every vad, even of Mahaprabhu Vallabhacharya, even explained by Bhagavadpada Shankaracharya, are some type of vacha. It is some type of vad. It is some type of a vakya. Or the procedure of realizing Brahman through the procedure of upasana or procedure of jnana or procedure of bhakti. In all these ways, we are trying to, Shankaracharya and Vallabhacharya both are trying to explain Brahman in some or the other way. But when they both accept that Brahman should be Viruddha Dharmashraya, from where yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha, then manasa pratyaksh also becomes questionable, your vani also becomes questionable, your vacha, your vakya, your vad, your philosophical system, everything becomes questionable by keeping these statements in correspondence. So that's what is the ground of integrity between both these acharyas, where they both culminate on this particular point, that we are trying to explain Brahman to the best of our capacity with his own desire, with the Jnana Shakti infused by him in our brain itself, but no sort of vad, vakya, man, pran, anna, atma, bhakti, upasana can ever touch the infinity of Brahman without his desire, or not the Brahman can ever be confined in any sort of these procedures. Now, just taking 2 more minutes about just historical relationship and the way they have been one with each other. So though Sri Shankaracharya and Vallabhacharya are not contemporary, but Madhusudan Saraswati, who has been accepted as the most prominent Acharya in Shankar Sampradaya, Vallabhacharya and Madhusudan Saraswati have been contemporary to each other, and they used to stay on 2 opposite sides of the river. So Mahaprabhu stayed in Adel and on the bank of Triveni Sangam in opposite to Prayag, and even Madhusudan Saraswati used to stay there. And the mind-boggling fact is that Mahaprabhu Sri Vallabhacharya, in spite of negating Shankaracharya in many of the ways, he sent his younger son Sri Vithalnath Prabhucharan to study with Madhusudan Saraswati. So Madhusudan Saraswati is guru of the younger son of Mahaprabhu Sri Vallabhacharya, and the relation between both these acharyas have been so strong and so nearer that Mahaprabhu Sri Vallabhacharya, who says that you should never share your devotional practice and procedure with anyone who is not so closer to you, disclosed his savior Vigrahas, whom he used to worship, disclosed his procedure of devotional practice with Madhusudan Saraswati, and he used to come to Sri Mahaprabhu's place for having darshan of his Vigrahas also, being guru of his younger son as well. So Sri Vithalnath Prabhucharan attained Vidya of all the Shastras from Madhusudan Saraswati, and the relation between both these acharyas have always been very strong and sweet with each other, where Madhusudan Saraswati is also praising the devotional sentiments of Mahaprabhu Sri Vallabhacharya in spite of having different approaches. So what I wanted to say as a conclusion is that Mahaprabhu is also accepting Bhagavadpada Shankaracharya as the Murdhanya avatar of Sadashiva, and Shiva is considered to be the Vaishnava. So where Bhagavan says that Vaishnavanam Yatha Shambhu. So I am Shambhu among all the Vaishnavas, and our Sampradaya has also been titled as a Rudra Sampradaya because Mahadev, as a Shukdev, incarnated and propagated whole Srimad Bhagavat Mahapuran, which is considered to be the baseline of Bhakti Sampradaya. So Mahaprabhu has always appreciated this thing, and he has committed, he has confessed this thing that I have no sort of problem with whatever Vad has been explained by Sri Shankaracharya, because he is the incarnation of Shiva. But the beings, the individual beings who are infused in both these sampradayas or both these philosophical systems, they have been chosen by Bhagavan for approaching him through two different methodologies. And that's why they can be kept different from each other, but the ground of oneness, on the ground of Brahmavad, on the ground of Viruddha Dharmashrita, on the ground of infinity of Brahman, should always remain one. This is what I had to say. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Maitri ji, for that wonderful talk. Very, very well explained to us that the infinite nature of Brahman itself prevents any one particular definition of that tattva. So there are many, there can be many definitions, and all of them are valid. We do have some questions, and one of the questions is from Krishna Chaitanya, who's saying, what is the source of the Mahavakya Dashamastvam Asi? Is this considered to be a Mahavakya as per the Advaita tradition?
Yes, it has been. Dashamastvam and Tattvamasi and Aham Brahmasmi, these three are accepted as Mahavakyas. And the whole procedure of realizing Brahman through the practice of the Gyan of these three Mahavakyas has been accepted in Shankara Sampradaya. And as I said, that procedure is of Atmopasana. It is not Brahma Gyan, because Brahma Gyan will always be on the level of Akhandadvaita Brahma Gyan, where Aham and Asmi are not revealed and only Brahman is revealed.
There's one more question, and which is that, see, traditionally the Swarupa of Brahman is defined as Satyam Jnanam Anantam. So where does that fit with the multiplicity of definitions, as you mentioned?
The multiplicity of definitions will go with defining Satta in multiple ways, Chit or Jnana Shakti in multiple ways, and Anand or Rati Shakti in multiple ways. So just like the way I said that, for example, Shankaracharya ji is explaining that there are three types of sattas. So Vyavahariki Satta, Pratibhasiki Satta, and Paramarthiki Satta. Now all these three sattas will find their mutual satta in the Sat Shakti of Brahman only. As I said, that Gyan, Agyan and Vigyan, where Upanishad is saying that Murtancha, Amurtancha Abhavat, Niruktancha, Aniruktancha Abhavat, Satcha, Tyatcha Abhavat. So here Sat, Tyat, Nirukta, Anirukt, Murt, Amurt, all these are contradictory characteristics. Still, when Upanishad is saying that Abhavat, Murtancha, Amurtancha Abhavat, then in this statement, Abhavat means that Brahman himself became Murt and Amurt both, or Tyat and Sat both, or Nirukt and Anirukt both. So the definitions of all these Vad will be incorporated in this particular perspective, that how do you define Satta, Sat Shakti of Brahman, or how you define Cheta Shakti or Ananda Shakti of Brahman. There everyone will differ, but mutualness will remain on the ground that Satta Shakti, Sat Shakti is of Brahman only, not owned by anyone else other than Brahman.
One last question which you can take, and if you can give us a quick reply. This question is that both the Acharyas diverged on the philosophical grounds. Did they also diverge on practices? And which were the practices that both the Acharyas differed on? Can you throw any light on that?
They do differ on the ground of the sadhana. That, for example, Shankaracharya is emphasizing upon the Jnana Marg, while Vallabhacharya is emphasizing upon Bhakti Marg. But it doesn't ever mean that Shankaracharya ji is negating the procedure of Upasana Marg, and Vallabhacharya is negating the whole practice of Jnana Marg. So though they are emphasizing upon one particular method, but it doesn't negate other methods. This is what I always wanted to say during the whole talk. So Shankaracharya has never negated the procedure of Upasana Marg. Same way, Mahaprabhu has never negated the procedure of Gyan Marg for attaining them.
Thank you so much, Maitri ji. That was a wonderful session. We have many more such sessions coming up. Tomorrow morning at India time, 7 a.m., we have Swamini Swatma Vidyananda will be talking to us about Advaita through the lens of the Dakshinamurti Stotram. So please join us and good night.